Okay, so this is slope and y-intercept continued. This was Thursday's work, Thursday, October 15th. We're still going to be using the same formula to find our slope, or sometimes it's called rate of change. But this time we're just looking at tables, so it's a little bit easier because they give you the numbers. You don't have to find your points on a graph, which helps a lot. The notes page, I'm just going to kind of skim through. I may work a couple of them out. There's the worksheet. Okay, I do want to look at this one on the examples because we are going to use the slope-intercept formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we can't see our y-intercept from here because there's no 0 on the x. So when we find our slope, that's how we'll find it. We'll have to work our way backwards. So for now, I'm just going to pick the two smallest points. So 2, 12, 13, and 67, and they're all positive, so that'll help. Since I have x and y, I'm going to label it x1, y1, x2, y2 for my second set, and then I'm going to plug those numbers into that formula. So my y2, I labeled 67, minus y1, which was 12, over the x's. So x2 was 13, minus x1 was 2. As long as you follow this exactly, you should be fine. As long as you label them, you should be fine. So we've got 67 minus 12 is 55. And then 13 minus 2 is 11. And we're going to divide that. 55 divided by 11 is 5. So sometimes if you can divide it into a whole number, that'll be your answer, like as far as multiple choice goes. Sometimes it might still be a fraction, just reduced. So be aware that sometimes this will be reduced, and luckily it worked into a whole number. Sometimes if you get a decimal, that's fine, but your answer choice might be a fraction. Anywho's, so our slope is 5. That's one answer. Now we need to find the y-intercept. And I'm going to kind of recreate what I have on the table down here. So I had 2 and 12, right? I got my x and my y. So I have to work my way backwards to get to 0, because the y value when x is at 0 is my y-intercept. So I just went backwards to 0. I just went by ones over here, 2, 1, 0. And now over here on the y's, I have to use that slope to get to the 0. So I'm going to say 12 minus 5, which is 7. Okay, and then I have to go back one more to match up with the 0. So 7 minus 5 is 2. So my y-intercept is 2. On this worksheet, I don't think you'll see any of those, but just in case, you want to be aware of how you can work backwards. Okay, so here's our tables. All pretty much have the y-intercept labeled. So where x is 0, that y value is your y-intercept. Okay, and I'm actually pretty sure the whole worksheet is like that. So 0. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I see my y-intercept on all of these. I'm just highlighting them all. Okay, and I would at the top write your formula down, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, because that's what we're using the whole time. And it helps if you use positive numbers, like I said, and you can even use, if you wanted to, we could use this point and this point, since there's no decimals, and sometimes that helps. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to label this as my x1, this is the y value, so that's my y1, those are a pair. I'm going to label this x2 and y2. Okay, so when I plug it into my formula, I've got y2 is 3. Minus y1, which was 1, over x2, which was 8, minus x1, which is 0. So 3 minus 1 is 2, 8 minus 0 is 8. Two ways that you might see this, it might be just reduced, because we can reduce 2 over 8. We can divide them both by 2, and that would be 1/4. Or if we just straight up divided that, 2 divided by 8, that would be 0.25. Okay, so that's your slope. And the y-intercept was already here because they gave us the 0 on the table, and so that is 1. Okay, so just like the last paper, we are going to have 2 answers, slope and the y-intercept. Okay, same thing, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to pick these 2 points because they're all positives, they're nice numbers, no decimals, and I'm going to label it x1, y1, x2, y2. So then I'm going to plug in the 10 because it's y2 minus 2, which was y1, over 4 minus 0. So 10 minus 2 is 8, 4 minus 0 is 4, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that's your slope, and the y was 2. Also, weird. Okay, and so that's kind of the gist for the whole thing. Again, you can pick whichever 2 points you want. I'm just picking ones that are positive and that don't have decimals, but you are more than welcome to use decimals. It really doesn't matter. If you've got a calculator, then you should be good to go. There's your y-intercept. And I rewrite the formula every single time. I don't know if that makes me crazy, but I just think it's easier. And I would use maybe these 2 points, even though there's a decimal, you've got a calculator, and then label it x1, y1, x2, y2, and then plug in what you've got. 6 minus 1.5 over 2 minus 1. So 6 minus 1.5 is 4.5, and 2 minus 1 is 1. And then if we divided that, 4.5 divided by 1 would just be 4.5. And then your y-intercept, so that's your slope, y is negative 3. Okay, same thing here. There's your y-intercept. This one you can't really avoid, but I would use these since they're positive. And it's the same thing, same formula. Write the formula down again and then plug it in from there. That'll really help. 5 is unfortunately all negative, so maybe we should look at this one. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and you know, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to pick these bottom two because they're, at least there's a 0. And I'm going to label it x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's plug in what we've got. y2, negative 2. And if there's a negative, you have to say minus negative 3.4. Okay? And then 0, because that's x2, minus negative 1. Okay? And that's exactly how it's going to be plugged into your calculator. So on top, I have negative 2, I don't know if you can see, nope, kind of, minus negative 3.4, and that gives me 1.4, and then 0 minus negative 1 equals 1. So then 1.4 divided by 1 is just 1.4. So that's your slope. And the y-intercept is negative 2. Okay, let's flippity flip. Tables, same thing on these. Make sure you do minus negative if you have negatives to use. This one, they give us the y-intercept because I see that the x is 0. So I know that that's the y-intercept right across from the 0. So I really can go ahead and eliminate anything that doesn't tell me that. So F is out and H is out because they gave me the wrong y-intercept. So then for this one, again, you're just picking the 2's, really whichever 2 you want actually. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going kind of fast. You can slow it down. I don't want to run out of time. 14.6 minus 15, 10 minus 0, 14.6 minus 15, so that's going to be negative 0.4 over 10. So I'm going to divide that by 10, and I get 0.04. So 0.04, if you're not sure, let's look at these two different things. So -1 divided by 25. Okay, so it's that one. But that's always what you can do, because -25 is too big. Equation, make sure you box in your numbers with the sign that comes right before it. More equations, and on this one, same thing, slope and the y-intercept, but you have to find your points. We can use the y-intercept as one of our points. Since it doesn't go anywhere on the x, but it goes up on the y, it's going to be 0, 2. And then one more point. These are super hard to see, but I think there's a point before, but I'm going to go with this one, which is kind of farther away. And that point is at 6, 5. Okay, so I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2, and then plug it in. If you need to write your formula down again, please do it. But I've got y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which was 0. 5 minus 2 is 3. 6 minus 0 is 6. And 6 reduces down to 1/2, or 0.5. So there's your slope. And the y-intercept was at 2. More on the back. I'm just gonna, since I'm gonna run out of time on this video, I'm just gonna do a point here, because that's your y-intercept. So that would be 0, 3. And there's another point, I think here, which is at 4 and 1. If you're stuck finding points on this thing, there you go. X1, make sure you label them. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Same thing, we can use 0, 0. It seems weird, but you can always use it. That's your y-intercept anyway. And then we can put a point. I think that's a point. I'm going to go with this one because I can see that one a little bit better. And that is at 2 and 4. Okay, so if you're stuck finding the points, so there you go. And that is it. That's the whole page.